Okay, so we are going to be analysing with block 4, Dulce Decorum Est, and we're focusing on AO1 and AO2 because this is a poem that you might consider doing for your coursework. So I want lots of ideas. Remember, our focus is on how typical the presentation of war is in this collection, and the collection of war poetry that we're using is from the Poetry Please and Anthology, and so those are poems that have been most requested by the British public, so at least they show that they are popular amongst the British public. So in our opening stanza, just like we did with High Flight yesterday, we might start to think about how the idea, or where, remember, structure is, where are you placed at the beginning of the poem, where are you at the end, how did you get there? So what's going on if we start maybe with these first 4 lines? Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. So what kind of setting's been established there? Or who would just like to pick out some interesting AO2? Ellie?
I was just going to say about starting out with Culture Decorum Est and then ending it with the same thing. Like the cyclical structure of it seems like the death's inevitable and unavoidable.
So the title, that's fine, and then linking to the fact that by the end of the poem that's revealed to be a lie. What do we know about the kinds of war poetry that was being written around the start of the war? Well, actually this is 1917, we're getting towards the end here. Rhiannon?
All the poetry was meant to make war look fantastic and amazing.
Right, so
the reality was it was...
Yeah, so lots of the poetry was written to be very patriotic, to present it as very glorified. He's not in the collection, but you might want to read Charles Sawley's poem, When You See Millions of the Mouthless Dead. That was written in 1915. So he's a nice kind of counter to that. That's a nice start, Ellie. Bethany, where would you like to take us?
I kind of thought it began with semantic poverty.
Right.
So maybe to introduce the suffering.
Lovely.
The struggle.
Because who's he describing here? Soldiers. But how are they being described? As poor people, and a bit more than that. They're not just poor. They're sick. Yep, coughing. Anything else? What about that word hags? Hags are usually
like a negative word in society.
very negative. Are they men or women? They're women normally, aren't they? The old hag. It's like the old witch in a fairy tale. So they're feminised, they're ill, they're poor. That opening, bent double, like old beggars under sacks. This is not the image of the British Army, is it, that we imagine in their pristine khaki. Right, Georgia?
You know how there's lots of similes at the start?
Yes.
Saying that they're like something. Does it show how wars strip them of their identity?
That's a lovely idea, Georgia. So the overuse of similes there suggests that they've been stripped of identity. Unrecognisable as soldiers or infantry. Lovely. Let's stick with these first 4 lines though. What else are we going to say? Poppy?
I was just going to say, because it says beggars when they're actually soldiers, that's kind of 2 different ends of the patriarchy, and then comparing the soldiers with beggars might kind of suggest that they don't have a home anymore, and though they're at the front end, they put their home, it could maybe foreshadow that they'll die and they won't have a home.
That's a lovely idea. Lovely. That's a well-developed idea. The sense of homelessness. Can anyone think of another word that we could use for that? Dispossessed. That idea of of not belonging, of losing everything. Abby, I think you had your hand up as well.
I'm not sure if this is right, but does the broken iambic pentameter mirror like the disjointed efforts of the man, like to try and keep up?
It moves in and out, doesn't it? So, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs and towards our distant rest began to trudge. But it doesn't establish it here, does it? So that disjointed meter is like the disjointed movement of the troops. Are we all clear what's happening in this stanza? Would anyone like to just quickly recap that?
Yeah, just like the soldiers walk through the trenches and just walk to where they need to go, like they're really ill.
Yeah.
They're just slowly.
Yeah. So one of the things that you may or may not know, this idea of trench warfare, you weren't out at the front trench forever. You had a certain amount of time there. So those of you who did, anyone do Journey's End for GCSE? No, you're all Inspector Calls. Journey's End is a lovely play, if you would like to read it as a bit more context background to this. But the idea that you, depending on how dangerous the trench was, you might be out at the front line trench for a few days or a few weeks, but then you would be relieved and you would fall back and back and back until actually you go right back to a place where you might be able to get a shower, maybe a town that's still kind of intact. So that's what these men are doing. Right, let's keep going. We've still not said everything we can say about this first stanza. Abby?
The word like sludge is like sound. Like you can hear it like the word.
Go on, so what's that when we can hear the word? Onomatopoeia? Yeah, lovely. And the sludge, the mud of the trenches was incredibly dangerous. I think it's a Sassoon poem that talks about a soldier slipping off the duck boards that they use to go across, and he goes under the sludge and he drowns. It was deep, it was thick, and it sucked you under. So death didn't necessarily have to come from bombing or snipers' rifles. There were all other kinds of inherent dangers. Where else are we going with this? You haven't talked about the third and fourth. Till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge.
The idea could be turned the backs could mean just believing the troops, but just giving up. So they continue, but like autopilots, they just return.
Yes. Autopilot. So everything's just become automatic. A sense of giving up. What's a better word for giving up? Defeat. They feel defeated. What about these haunting flares? What's the effect of describing the flares as being haunting? And why is that important further on in the poem? Go on, Logan.
Because it's as if the flares signal their death. It's like death itself is knocking at the door.
Ooh. Good. And tell me how that links later on. Hannah? What's he going to be doing later on in this poem? You were drinking? That's it, she's hit the beer. It's, 9:25 on the morning. Maybe I'm asking the wrong question. I'm wondering if the haunting flares link with anything further on in the poem.
Could you sort of say what might be PTSD, like the so sick of seeing?
Yeah, so what did they call PTSD? Shell shock. Right. Who could get shell shock?
No.
Anyone could get shell shock. No, don't be silly. Only officers could get shell shock. If you were a regular soldier, what were you doing? That's right, you were shirking. You were a coward. You were just trying to get out of what you were doing. So, didn't know that, did you? So you would not be treated with the same kind of respect or care as an officer. Again, if anyone would like to read more on that, Pat Barker's novel Regeneration is a really, really good book because it's about Owen and Sassoon meeting at Craiglockhart and the different medical treatments that were used. So Dr. Rivers treated his officers with what we would call now talking therapies, a bit of hypnotherapy, trying to get people to relive and deal with their experiences. And then he goes to visit a man called Dr. Yelland down in London, who is treating regular soldiers, but he's using, because one of the features of shell shock was often to become mute, or to have a stammer, and he would treat them by applying electrodes to their tongues until they could speak again. So I'll let you make up your mind which perhaps was the most humane treatment. So that was Regeneration by Pat Barker, and Pat Barker's a local author. She's from Thornaby. She's amazing. Emily?
Could it link to when you mentioned devil and sin as well?
Yeah. Yeah, so it links to when he said, go on, tell me why.
It's almost like the things that they experience are of this world.
Right, lovely. Like an otherworldly kind of connection. I haven't explained that, but like horror stories. Annie, did you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, it was like the whole thing could link to like in all my dreams.
Yeah.
It's just the way that like it's almost like scary, the way like it keeps coming like
Yes.
back and you can't escape it.
Yeah.
It's really real.
He's haunted by his dreams and his flashbacks as well. Good. Emily, did you have your hand up again?
Because if it's like horror stories could link to what it mentions about how you wouldn't even tell children about.
Yes, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory. And who might those children be? Does it have to literally mean little children? Who might it be referring to?
It could be referring to people who just haven't been what people who just
Yeah.
so like wives,
Yeah.
family members.
Yeah. And what about the young men who wanted to sign up? The young boys who wanted to sign up as well? I think the youngest boy to be killed in World War I was 14. He was a drummer boy for one of the battalions, and his grave is in Belgium. And of course we know that lots of people lied. I think that's in another Wilfred Owen poem. Lying, you wrote his age, because they were quite happy often, the recruiting officers, to go along with the lie. Right. So do we feel like we've covered enough in those first 4 lines? So what's going on in the next? Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshod. Oh, actually, it has reminded me of something. The Saxon hags. So Owen's use of half rhyme or para rhyme for effect is something. He didn't invent it, but he certainly kind of made it his own in his poetry. It's something to look out for. It's a real feature of his poetry as he moves from being the romantic poet that he aspired to be to a more truthful recorder of the events of war. Many had lost their boots but limped on, bloodshod. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Abby?
It's like dehumanisation, because like the all went lame, all blind. Kind of refers to them as horses.
Dehumanisation. That's lovely. Also, I must stop saying lovely. That's well observed. Did they all go lame and all go blind? So what is it? So we've got hyperbole. But what's that hyperbole doing? When we read that hyperbole, do we go, oh, as if? Beth?
Is it like kind of counteracting like the beliefs and what the people in charge are carrying out, like their
So, does the hyperbole do any harm in this poem? No, because what it does is it's trying to send that message that this is what it felt like. It felt like we'd all gone lame, and it felt like we'd all gone blind because everybody was so affected. What about the men march to sleep? What does that link with?
Could suggest that they're just like, just like robots, they're just kind of like corpses walking.
Like walking corpses, yeah, and again with the drunk with fatigue. The only thing that I've got that's vaguely that makes me feel I can vaguely kind of relate to that is when you've got a newborn baby and you definitely haven't had a drink, but that tiredness and the thing is that connects it, I suppose, is that you can't stop. You don't get to tag out when you've got a newborn baby. They're going to cry and they're going to want to be fed. Just like these men couldn't go, hang on, I need a rest, I need a breather. Can we just stop the war for like a couple of hours? Just get my head down. So it's that feeling of being drunk, and it fits with that sense of like otherworldly, of being disconnected from the world around you. So we talked about the onomatopoeia, we've got the coughing, and we've got the hoots of gas shells. Bethany?
Is men march to sleep many? Is that alliteration?
Is it what? Didn't hear the first.
Alliteration.
Alliteration or?
No, is it just alliteration?
Yeah.
Would it be like to mimic kind of the ongoing?
Yeah, the relentlessness of war. What about that word hoots? Nicole?
It's not really a word that you describe like folk as well, it's more like natural.
Right, no, who would you expect to hear hooting? An owl. There was an owl rescued in the Dean across our house the other day. A big tawny owl that had been found with a hurt wing. Don't worry, it's been taken good care of now. So hoots is something that you would expect to find in a natural landscape. So what does that tell you about how the Freya? They become immune to the effects of war, that they've become so, the landscape has been so overtaken by the unnatural effects of war that it's starting to feel natural. Yeah. Emily? Desensitized, that's a good word. Right. Bethany?
Could you say something about like the fact that they become kind of like the all-round nature, like they've taken over so much
Yes.
that they're almost like them owls nocturnal, like relentlessness.
Oh, so you're linking that to like the sleep deprivation as well. That's a nice idea. Yeah, good. And what about deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind? Alex?
Softly sort of makes it as if like by having it deaf even to the hoots, it's sort of like beating themselves up because they didn't hear the gas shells. But when it says softly, it means that they probably wouldn't have been able to even if they'd been hearing. If it's dropping softly,
Yeah.
it's not loud,
So you're moving that's something to do with blame.
yeah,
Like,
blaming themselves for it.
yeah, I'd never thought about that before. They're so tired, aren't they? They're just so out of it that all they can think of is the distant rest. You know, and that's another thing. You know, often they would have journeys of several miles before they could get to some rest, and that had to be factored in to the time it would take them to then head back as well, maybe in a day or a couple of days.
Did you not think that some of them would collapse or even die of exhaustion?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshod. What about that word, bloodshod? Poppy?
Isn't it like linking to horses?
Yeah.
Horses are shod, but then it
Yeah.
also said of blood with like the mud in the trench.
Yeah.
And that emphasises the kind of difficulty.
Yes.
Them walking and of foraging.
So they have been shod in blood. Their feet are bloody, but they're still moving on. They're still going. Bethany?
It's like they're intoxicated.
Yes.
Like completely like mind and body.
Mind and body completely on autopilot. Okay, I'm going to pause it there because I'm aware that the video doesn't like it when I go past 20 minutes. 20 minutes we've spent just on that first stanza.
You know if you want to pause it first.
I'm going to do it now. She's dead bossy, Ellie, isn't she? She's always telling me off.
I don't know when you're going to talking about how it's like to be paused and then not pause it.
Do you like to be paused? I'll pause you now.